Anyway, what we're going to cover today is topic number 5, which is essentially the leadership and team performance. And I'll bring on a bit of a journey about the attributes, and you'll see how these are linking back to the psychometric areas that we've spoken about already, in particular the empathy and emotional intelligence, and how these are so integral in extracting the best from your team, from your colleagues, from your and building on very, very solid relationships within your organization, and how that can underpin and propagate effective organizational learning, and ultimately up into growth and maturity of an organization, all starting from with yourself as a leader and your team around you. Okay, so what I want to do first is I'd like to digress into just a little bit of general commentary. Now, obviously, I can't do the poll with you, but it doesn't particularly matter, because I'll fight through this topic of such. But what I want to introduce or revisit is this concept of PIPs, okay, and these personal improvement plans that companies have begun to use in the last several years as such, by way of coercing, cajoling people, or pressuring people into improving their performances within their departments or within their team.
What I've noticed lately, PIPs. How many of you, genuine question now, how many would you have heard of PIPs? And I don't mean the personal insolvency practitioners, but PIPs has been used in the HR practice. Yeah. What do you think of them? How many of you would agree with them? Most people disagree with them. What appears to be emerging with these PIPs is that they're being used as a mechanism to fire people. And that's the blunt use of them, really. And they're, personal improvement plans or performance improvement plans, call them what you will. Point I'm coming around to is that what's beginning to emerge is that the users of these PIPs, as I said, they're used as a mechanism to fire people. And once you start to introduce or even mention a PIP to an employee, immediately the trust element begins to go down. Okay, you begin to create this appearance or not appearance, but this air of fear inside an organization, and oftentimes that's been used to send messages out to other employees. Now, there's a whole thing behind all of this. I am probably one of the biggest instigators of this is Google. Anyone here working on Google? You're not going to put your hand up now, anyway. But Google seems to be this. And if you trace back again, where does Google come from? It's American-based. And mostly American-based companies are very much target-driven, objective-driven, and so on. So do it at any cost. Hit targets and they become a little bit less personalized. So whoever you are, unless you're brash and bold to hit targets, then we don't want you. That's emerging from a number of these. Now, I've talked to a number of people lately about all of these PIPs. Some people who had actually been issued PIPs, and they walked from the companies. They said, forget this, I'm not taking this crap. But where was I? Oh yes, these PIPs. So the people that had been issued or were being threatened with issue walked from companies, and these are people that would have been 3, 4, 5, 6 years in the companies. It's not just for new people. And you say, well, come on, Mark, where are you going with all this? It all comes back to this issue around leadership and your professional development, because we already have the tools. And exactly as you said, the PCPs, the coaching plan, we already have the tools, and you already have the tools to be more effective as managers and leaders in your organizations. And one of the other worrying aspects of these PIPs as well is that the managers using, I am absolutely convinced that these are incompetent managers. And simply for the reason that they don't know how to manage or lead. They certainly don't know how to coach, because they're using it for the toxicity of, and I will be coming back to this later on when we talk about leadership styles, and in my context, not in Dave's context, but leadership and followership. That's why I get you to do these psychometric tests. And we'll talk about this whole area of toxicity because, it's all the dark side of work, but of course you've all, well, I won't say all, but you probably have experienced various levels of it and throughout your careers in different organizations. It exists, but the important thing is how you actually handle all of this stuff. Okay, and how you recognize it inside in your teams, and how you're able to coach and develop your teams and lead them into a far more effective, high-performing team. So as I said, the point about it, when I said that they already exist, we have appraisal systems. The more effective companies now, this is where I have to swallow my commentary and say, Jack Welch, and I might have mentioned this in passing previously, but Jack Welch, who was CEO of General Electric, he rates HR as the second most important function in an organization. So sales and marketing have just burst your balloon. But HR being second most important, to a large extent, I'd agree with him, contrary to what I say. However, if you think of how HR and how you as managers in your organizations would actually perform, you're actually taking on what's essentially a distributed HR function. And by that I mean is that your group, you want to employ someone, you have to write the job spec, the personal spec, or the personal specification, and so on, and then go to HR, ask them, can you find people that match these profiles, and then probably get them to do a raft of psychometric tests, and which HR will probably arrange and all that. So HR serves a function to get at least the right candidates according to your specification. You interview them. HR will sit in on the interview, but you're interviewing because you're looking for skill sets, you're looking for competencies and capabilities and people that match the profile of your team or your department, such that you can get someone that can hit the ground at least running, or at least their learning curve would be reasonably quick to come up to speed with your team. Okay, so in that context, you are actually taking on your HR functions. Okay, so then after that, then you have the usual stuff, the appraisals and so on. Now, how many of you would be appraised once a year, twice a year, 4 times a year, 1 or 2? You should be aiming for that kind of level, 3 to 4 times a year of appraisal, and say, oh, mother of Jesus, now you're going to create more work for us with staff and so on. Oh, this is the whole point, and this is why I have such an angst towards PIPs at the moment, is because unless you're informing your staff of how they're performing, what the expectations are, how the hell do you expect them to know themselves? They need feedback, and you need to be in that position. You need to set aside a time to be able to give proper attention, proper coaching, support, and pave the way for them to excel in their jobs. That's good leadership and management in modern organizations. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist everywhere. As I said, that there's this cult, as I'd call it, coming in where these managers are using hard tactics to try and get performances out of people. That's which it is. You may come in. So these as I said, that style of leadership and having effective appraisals in place. I don't know what kind of systems if you're using them. One of my more favorite ones would be the likes of these 360 appraisal systems and so on, which are very extremely effective, and where you get the employee to set goals and agree goals with your manager, or you as the manager agree the goals with the employee, and then you get feedback from peers, colleagues, people that you have direct connection with, those that you may not have direct connection. So the more feedback you get, I mean, when we did these many years ago in companies, we'd get 12, 13, 14 forms of feedback from various people. So we would aggregate a more informed consensus from people. As I said, peers, managers, colleagues, obviously all inside in work. But it gave us a very, very fair picture. But more importantly, it gave the staff member themselves an indication of who they were. So they would say, well, yeah, I am good at communications, or I'm not so good at communications. And these are important because oftentimes if you try to sit down and set your goals and your objectives, the staff member says, I'm brilliant. Technically, I'm brilliant. I'm going to score myself a 5. And I'm also excellent at communication, and so on, so on, so on. And they rate themselves. But in reality, are they? Or are you actually being honest with yourself? Of course, you're not. You might be a 4. You might only be a 2. You might have a perception of yourself that you're good at such and such a thing until you get the feedback, and where you get 5, 6, and 10 people come back and say, geez, Mark, you're not actually as good a communicator as you'd like to think you are. So then you have to stand back and say, well, okay, there's something wrong here. I think this, they say that. So I need to merge these together. That's why when we carry out some of these advanced professional development programs, we analyze all these types of behaviors with people, and then we graph all of this information, and where we have divergence or deviations from the norm, where your graph mapped against the aggregate of all the other commentaries, then we say you need an intervention. So it may be on some of your interworking skills, it may be on your communications, it may be on some of your technical skills. The whole range. Some of these we have, maybe 160 different skill sets or competencies that we get people to assess. Fortunately, you're not going to have to do that. There's too many of you for starters, and I will be finished until next year sometime trying to analyze those. But it's a great way of getting, as I said, getting a very fair, unbiased, hopefully, commentary back on yourself. So when we talk about leadership, I'm moving on to topic 5. Just before we go there, I said that the emotional intelligence element of your course could take 2, possibly 3 weeks, and it is spilling over into the 3rd week. I'm not doing it today. I'm just doing this, and for a particular reason. You're now coming out. You've pretty much covered the basics in terms of the self. When we talk about the awareness, you've done your MBTI, learning styles. You've probably by this evening, 12 o'clock tonight or whatever, finished the remaining 2 tests, the emotional intelligence and so on. So it's given you a picture. Now, as I said in the assignments, I just wanted those results just for yourself. So, I mean, there's no right or wrong answers in this. So they're pretty handy marks to be picking up in terms of assessment. But where do we go from here? So you have 2 more pieces to do for me, or will do, and that's the leadership and the followership styles. So you have this half dozen or so pieces of psychometric tests. Next stage we'll bring you on to is the reflective practice and reflective journal. In that, I'll get you to go back onto those results and then critique those results, and critique them in the context of your work. Maybe past examples that you can say, yeah, well, this is correct, that wasn't correct, I should have done it this way, now I know what to do for future. Okay, I'll be quite explicit in the assignment brief of what I want you to do when filling out this kind of reflective report. And that reflective report then will become your starting point for the remainder of the program. So at the end of your group assessment with Dave, now you're all going to be broken into groups. God love you. At the end of that, you're going to have to reassess yourselves again. So you're going to use the techniques and the tools that we've introduced you to and reassess yourselves towards the end of that. And then be able to stand back and say, now I've done this back in semester 1, and now I've done this in semester 2, and I have a reasonable grasp of how I can use these in my workplace. Some people might say, yeah, this is great. Some people might say it's absolute crap. Other people might say, I never even heard of this. You know, it's what you take of it yourselves. In any case, you will have some benefit from these concepts and the ideas and frameworks and so on that we were introducing you to. So you remember this one. We talked about this before, and how we said we'd look primarily at those areas. Okay? When I mentioned about PIPs, this is what's happening in here. We're getting a serious battering of honesty and integrity, certainly on the integrity score when you're defaulting to. One of my MBA students, whom I have after yourselves, was telling me yesterday that he accidentally gave one of his staff a rating of 2, okay, which he thought was reasonable. If he was performing okay, gave him a 2. It triggered a PIP from HR, and he was dumbfounded. He said, "What in the name of God? What's after happening here?" Oh, if it's a 2, he needs to be hitting a 3. If it's a 2 or 3 below, it automatically generates a PIP. So he said, for 6 weeks, I had sheer hell trying to coach and mentor and inform this employee of something that they didn't do wrong. and he had to reverse and do this. So he said he had to go through the motion, and it took up his time because of a stupid process that's in place. Okay? But it would have undermined the integrity of that guy himself. In other words, if he would be an exemplar of integrity insofar as that this is wrong, the process is wrong. Get that out of my face. And he won't use them anymore, as he said himself. If he sees something coming out of HR, he immediately overwrites them. But this is the point about it. At least he has the maturity and the integrity to know what's effective for his staff or not. So we've looked at these points. Now, I mentioned to you before my famous 3 M's in conversation. So this is the simple diagram. As I said, I like simple things because I'm a simple person, so it works. When we talk here, develop a personal mission statement. It's the same for a company. Companies develop mission statements. One of my old mentors, Professor Noel Mulcahy from Limerick below, he said there's a lovely French expression, raison d'être. In other words, the reason for being. And that's exactly the same thing on a personal level. Why do you exist? Why do you get up in the mornings? Why are you in here? What's your mission statement? So you have a sense of purpose that keeps you going all the time. And that's essentially what it is. So we all have our own personal mission statements, why we want to do things and so on, or not. But generally speaking, we have a reason for wanting to do things. And that's the simplicity of that first step. The second one here, choosing the mentor. And I mentioned this as well. Be careful who you choose as a mentor. And I gave some examples. You know, I talked about Hitler, I talked about Gerry Adams, and so on. And I forgot to mention about my mother and my younger sister. Thundering person she is. But no, she's nice. She's the matriarch of the family. You know, she keeps me on the straight and narrow. But there are other cases. And I mentioned that this guy Terje Nurmi. You wouldn't know who the hell he was, but he was a project manager that I worked with a number of years ago in Germany. He was a Finnish guy, and I just loved the way he actually operated, his style, and as I said, he was an absolute double for Ronnie Drew. He looked like him, the beard a whole lot, and he drank like a fish. You know, and the great part of his job, he had to go around to all the subsidiaries on these project kickoff meetings, and for about 6 weeks he was in the horrors. You know, he literally, and as a compensation, his wife came over with him from Finland to Aachen, and because he was on the road so much, she got a brand new BMW 5 Series. You know, I said, there you are, but there's not a sting, but there's a trick in it. Because he was coming out of Finland, they had to pay no taxes, no customs, or anything, so they got it for less than half the price that you pay for it over the counter here. So happy days, you know, everyone's happy, and so was he, very happy for 6 weeks anyway. But he just, apart from that aspect, he had a tremendous emotional stability. When we had various crises in the projects, he was the go-to man, and he was able to very effectively placate things and take the sting out of all these issues. And I always remember on one occasion, I actually, even to this day, think he was at a test. We were coming back from Madrid. We were after meeting the local sub-project manager down there, and the problem was they couldn't hit their targets on tests on time, and we had to put some kind of mechanisms in place. So we went away with a kind of a plan and half-discussed plan. Got into a taxi. And he said to me, Mark, what do you think we should do in this case, or have we made the right decision? And I actually don't know whether he was testing me or whether he was genuinely asking me my innocent advice and so on. So we discussed it over, flew back to Cologne, got a taxi from there to Aachen, went for a jar, as you do. And we said we'd have a quick pint on this and discuss it even further. And the discussion got quite heavy and lengthy and so on and so forth. So we said we'll call it a night at 8 o'clock the following morning. It was one of those bars that stayed open. When I went out, it was bright as a mother, Jesus. Anyway, but we solved every problem in the world, I can guarantee you that. You know. But it ended up that we put another plan. We literally had to think outside the box, and we actually asked the telecoms company down there, the National Telecom, Mobile, I think it was at the time, could we use their training site at night and so on. So we came up with a solution. But it was what I admired was the way he took the pressure off the local sub-project manager, made a few decisions, or supported a few decisions there, and the guy went off with a spring in his step. But he did that for everyone, and he was one of my mentors. And other people, various people, but the point about it is, when you're looking at these mentors, don't try and copy them. And I said this to you before. how they might look, the gestures they might make, their tone of voice, and so on. Don't try to copy them. Don't try to be that other person, because it's false, and people see this. As I said, nonverbal communication approximates about 80, sometimes 90% of the communication protocol. And consequently, people pick up on these signals and they know that it's not genuinely you. But you can actually take some of their gestures, you can take some of their idiosyncrasies maybe, and make them your own. And that's what I mean by mentor. So those qualities are characteristics you might see in other colleagues, friends, families, celebrities, if you're into that. Whatever they do, make them your own. And you will. Now, for example, if you ever watched, I'm not a political type person anyway, but your man, Enda Kenny, when he was talking away, talking the side of his mouth, and he'd be looking down like this and he'd be looking down like that. That's a direct copy from Obama. Obama had that unique quality of not directly looking into a camera. He just looked away as if he was engaging more with the audience that were physically there, and lend a lot more, and of course then the rest of his tone and his gestures and so on supported that genuine personality that he exhibits. And you won't even talk about charisma. That was already there. Clinton would be more in the charismatic side or charisma oriented. But Obama had this kind of technique from stairs. And Kenny tried to do the same thing, and you could see it. Well, a number of us could see it anyway, but it didn't feel right, you know. It's gobshite from me. No, I won't say that. The bloody mic is on. Oops. Anyway, no, he's a nice chap. He was. Yeah. So taking care of choosing a mentor, and that's the point in it. You know, be very, very careful. Then we talk about this last part on here: stand in front of the mirror to assess your ethical performance as a business leader. And I'm not purporting that you do the Bill Cullen on it, you know, and stand in front of the mirror and say, "Geez, how great I am," you know. It's generally just it's essentially reflection. Reflect back and look at the ideas, look at the decisions you've made, taken, and so on and so forth, whether it was during the day, past week, recently, or whatever. But looking at those various decisions and actions you've taken, and do they sit well with you? Now, I don't know if you've had time to look at the Goldman video where he talks about the physiological and psychological effects of emotional intelligence, or the characteristics, and when he talks about the middle brain and connection to the gut and intuition and all that. So there is clear evidence that there is a physiological thing going on here. And you all know yourselves, you know, if you see a brand new car on sale for half the price, then you say, geez, that's too good a deal, it's too good to be true. Well, then most likely it is true, and so on. So it's a pretty obvious gut feeling and so on. But in the real world, then, in normal operations, certain things can be very subtly not good. The data will back up all the information that you have in front of you, but something just doesn't sit right with you. That's the gut feeling or the intuition. And I would say to most of you, looking around here, I am still, without a doubt, the eldest person in here. I'm quite sure of it. And consequently, experience and gut feeling, I would say implicitly trust your gut. Because, and I don't know, maybe it's an age thing, I'm not sure. But over the years, I say, no matter how much the data has stacked up, and if it doesn't feel right, I've kind of either shied away or walked away or just pushed it to the back and say, no, there's something not right, I need more information, or I need more exposure to the situation to get more, pick up on more nuances that might affect my intuition in some shape or form, okay? So that's the point about this. So it's a very simple model, it's just, but it's very, very powerful when we talk about this ethical behavior. Now, again, it will depend on your own moral and ethical standards. Some are quite low, others are quite normal, and others are quite high. But at least if you have that level of how to say, comfort in your decision making, then fine, you can progress from there. Okay. I'm showing you this. You can take. Have any of you ever done this Blake Mouton managerial grid test? No? Literally, you can go online. There's only a handful of questions, and you can find out whether you're a country club manager, a team manager, or a authority compliance or impoverished manager. It's a nice, simple little exercise. Again, I'll pre-warn you, the packaging on the labels. Don't take these as absolute gospel. They're just a snapshot. Be very, very careful. And I really have to emphasize this point. All these things are dynamic. They change over time. Now, I don't know if you've had that. There was an excellent program on the other night. I recorded it and watched it last night, and it was about personality. It was the final in a series where this guy was looking at how do we understand personalities and so on. And eventually they got to twins, and how one twin was had chronic depression, and tried to figure out, well, why can this be happening? Is it gene, nature, or nurture? And they have identified that there are certain genes that can turn on and turn off over the course of our life. But again, fundamentally, it's a lot of it is nurture and so on. And then he had the experiments with the rats and baby rats and all that sort of stuff. And but anyway, the bottom line is things change. So even in our when he was using the Mike Mosley, I think was the guy's name, and when he was talking about these twins, it was really fascinating to see that identical twins in every sense of the word, how their personalities can differ. And he was trying to ascertain for himself, why as a child he was quite open, bubbly, and so on and so forth. Why in his later life, the guy would probably in his 50s now, late 40s, why he has issues with sleep, and why he would be tended to be more of a pessimist and anxious about things. And here's the good news: he actually came up with some really excellent methods of reducing his anxiety levels and improving his positivity. And one of them was meditation. Just taking time out, about 10, 15 minutes, 10 minutes a day, and clearly meditating. So in other words, you're taking reflective practice. You can do it that way as well. Just clear your head out and just give yourself space, head space. Take a brain dump, call it what you will. But this is, so when we coming back into this point here about the managerial grid, they're dynamic, they can change. And for example, if you do the test, it's a 9 by 9 grid, okay? So 9 out here and 9 up here. And essentially, you answer the questions, and you end up with. You remember from primary school, you can plot the graph. So come out 5 and up 4, or out 5 and 5 in the middle here, or out 7 and up 7 here, and you end up here. Whatever the way the answers to your questions work out when you run through the scoring pattern. Now, these guys up here, country club managers, very much people oriented. Okay, do everything and anything. But there's the negative side is that they overly focus on people, and they want to be liked by people. Hence, you get this kind of country club perception of them. In some organizations, you do need that for a time. You might need people that are very people oriented to pull them along. It depends on the type of organization. Down here, you have authority compliance or task driven. That's primarily for the likes of project managers. They tend to fall into this area here. That's not to say they don't care about people, but their number one focus would be achieving tasks, deadlines, goals within projects themselves. So you would like to be ideally somewhere up around here, or in here, middle of the road. In other words, you can change. You can adapt to the different types of situations. Sometimes you might need to motivate people very highly such that they can achieve their objectives. Sometimes you need to be able to be explicit about the objectives before people can actually get buy-in, clear communications. If you're talking about visions and mission statements and strategies and so on, you might have some clarity here, and you need to be able to convince people this is where we're going, this is where the company is evolving towards. And down here you have these poor guys, the impoverished managers. They're the guys I have most respect for. Been there, know what it's like. But these are guys and ladies that can oftentimes find themselves not enough resources, not enough finance, not enough time, not enough equipment. And usually what comes out of here is some brilliant ideas, some changes, really innovative thinking. Well, this is my lot. I have to make it work with what I've got. And out of that, you'll hit targets. You'll achieve your objectives. Not through the normal processes or using, because you don't have that availability. You might have to change processes and so on. And that's where, as I said, the innovative capacity comes out of that. Now, you can't stay there. You can't be constant. Now, some people say, well, geez, I've been there for the last 10, 15 years. It's not a good place to be in. To be constantly firefighting and constantly arguing and looking for resource and constantly looking for more people and equipment and so on and so forth, it would wear you down, without a shadow of a doubt. But it doesn't do any harm to spend some time down there, even if you purposefully go in and take on a really crap project just for the sake of saying, well, look, I want to test myself. Okay, just be careful. Okay, but that's the impoverished manager. But eventually, through their ingenuity or inventiveness, they can move up towards here. They can progress fairly quickly through organizations. On the flip side of all of this, you have what we call worker readiness. And we have these, we just rate them simply because it's part of this model that I'm going to show you shortly. And you have R4, confident, willing, and able. Okay? Ideal. Geez, it'd be great to have people in your organization like that all the time, or even on your team. Sorry, I'm going to have to, even though it says no food or anything, I'm thirsty. I talk too much. So you have this willing, confident type and capable, able people. And as I said, you would love to have these inside in your organization. And you do. You have them. Generally speaking, they will be the most experienced, they'll probably be the most qualified, and so on type people in your organization. All right? So stick with this now for a moment. Then you have these guys, insecure, not willing, but they are able. Okay? So they lack confidence or maybe lack training. Down here you have confident, willing, but they're not able. So they're full of motivation. They're looking forward to getting their sleeves rolled up and getting stuck into a job, but they haven't been trained properly. They haven't been inducted properly. They don't know the processes. They could be new to your organization. They could be graduates, and they still don't know your organizational procedures and cultures and so on. And then you have this down here, insecure, not able, and not willing. Okay? So this is where you have to revert back to what we refer to as single loop learning. And these will be people that you have to try and motivate and at the same time tell them how to do their job. They exist. In our company, I'm going to be shot for saying this, Jesus. We had a young lady, I still have, until I get the pips going. No. We had this young lady, and honest to God, now, there are some of our creditors, some of our debtors, they still want paper invoices. Okay? Mostly it's done through our SAP system and out the door and so on. But still there's a few old diehards, and we still have a franking machine. Okay? So this young lady was brought in until Christmas. Thank God for that. Jeez, I can't wait to see the back of her. Anyway, oh Jesus, the mic is on. To hell with it. So all she had to do was fold the invoices, put them in, you know, the glass windows, the see-through window with the envelopes. You know the ones the bills come in with your name on it. Well, we were sending those out, and all she had to do was fold these up and send them out. There was about 60 or 70 of them. That was all very fine. Showed her how to do it, and happy days. Matty Hayes. Sorry, that's a Tom Mill joke, caricature. So, anyway, oh, jeez, that is bad. You can tell the rest of the matters. I'm not saying it in public, but anyway, this young lady. Anyway, so that was earlier last week. This Tuesday morning, there was all the envelopes in the post. They all came back. And Siobhan, said, "What the name of God?" And I said, "Oh, Mother of Jesus!" She put our company name in the glass window. I said, "You have got to be kidding me." Nope. And they all came back. So we went down to her manager and said, "Here, you sort that mess out, you know." But, okay, it costs about 60 or 70 euros for franking and all that sort of stuff. That wasn't the real issue. When we explained, do you realize now that all of those, there was a substantial amount of money due back in. And we use invoice factoring, which means, you know, that we get money each month from a finance factoring company. And so on, and we have an exemplary system and process in place. They actually use the company as a model to other companies. That's not to any any of my influence whatsoever. It's the others, and the finance department, the couple that are in there, and the factoring company. You know, as I said, you know, you have a really tight ship and so on and so forth. By virtue of these that stupid mistake, and of course all mistakes are stupid. Um, it means that it's going to screw up the credit period and the invoice factoring. So it could affect our kind of reputation with the company. Plus, it means that we're going to be at least a week late before the cash comes back in. And there's only 2 words in business that you need to know, and that's cash flow. That's an MBA now, just after teaching it. In a 2-year MBA program is cash flow. If you can't manage your cash, get the hell out of business. If you can't manage your budgets, forget about it. Find another job, and so on. Seriously, that's when it comes down to it. So anyway, that was she falls into that category. So we have to go back and redo the single loop learning and tell them what to do. Then you have what's known as double loop learning, where you have two-way conversation, you get feedback, and the person that you might be instructing or informing, coaching or supporting and so on, they're asking questions back, so they get a little bit more clarity and they're clear in their own heads. We even have a model for that. We call it SECI, S-E-C-I. It's socialization, externalization, combination, and internalization. So in a nutshell, what it means that the other people understand what you're saying and they make sense of it internally, of the instructions and guidance and so on. And that's the double loop learning. There is a triple loop learning, but it's a little bit more complex when you're changing the original pattern, the original reasons as to why you started out in this particular journey. But we'll come back to that. I will talk about that when we come to reflection. So these are the types of people that you have in your team, generally speaking. So they'll range. They won't be as cut and dry as that. They'll range, and they'll change over time. Okay, and we'll see what happens here. Sorry, I don't want to jump on that far. And in this case, this is just this diagram just explains a little bit more what you do for the various readiness types. And we'll say here, low task behavior, low relationship behavior, when you're having to delegate. These are the R4s. These are the experts inside. If you walk up to someone that knows their job already, that someone's really serious and experienced inside in your organization, and you tell them what to do, duck. Because you're going to get a hit of a 4x2 across the back of the head. If you try to tell somebody that really knows what they're doing, knows their job and so on and so forth, try to tell them what to do. It's like the wife telling me inside in the kitchen. I tell her how to cook my meals. That's caught on camera. And I'm out of 4x2 distance. But that's the point. That's the point about it. You don't tell knowledgeable people what to do. As I said, it's a risk. Duck. And then on the other side of it here, the far end of it, because usually speaking, in that team, you'll have a mix of people, and you'll have the more experienced people, and you can rely on them, and they almost instinctively know what's expected of them, what the project entails, what the objectives of the project are, what we have to do to achieve objectives, and they get on with it. You don't go on and ask them, well, where are we at now? They'll tell you where you are at now, how well advanced or what kind of problems. If they need help, they'll come to you. Okay? And usually when they need help, they'll come to you and as their manager or leader. They'll have solutions in their pocket. They'll usually come and say, look, this is a challenge, but we think this might solve and so on and so forth. They'll come with the solution. Sometimes to make life easier for you to make the decision, they already know that they're going to get the decision for that solution, and everything moves on nice and smoothly as such. As I said, they're the R4s, low task behavior and low relationship. And then on the other end of it, high task behavior, low relationship. So you have to, because you're in this instructor mode, it doesn't build up, it takes time to build up relationships with people while this is you, that's them. This is the technical side of your business. Remember on the wheel of characteristics, we talked about technically know the business you're in. And that means essentially how well you know your own job. And that's how you get to convince these people or influence them or coach them, because they're relying on your expertise. So you at least need to know the business you're in or the area you're in. And this is the whole lot put together. Without a shadow of a doubt, this is one of my favorite diagrams of all times. It's Hershey Blanchard's situational leadership. Okay? And the reason why I like it is because it says situation or situational. It happens, it's dynamic, it moves around. So in other words, you need to know that at some point in time you could be telling somebody with the intention, You'd like to get them over here, but you might have to move them through some of these steps to get them to this level. You need to. This is the A team. If you have people that are in this level of the organization, I mean, happy days. You just carry on, and they'll do the work for you. They know what has to be done. Okay, it exists. It's rare. I would say I definitely had the privilege of having been in organizations where I was down that side of things. One company in particular, it was a Finnish company, worked with them down in Shannon for 5 years. The best 5 years of my life, with the exception of today, of course. Oh, Jesus. It, it was definitely the best 5 years of my professional career. The guys were and ladies in this organization were absolutely brilliant, technically and personally. There was no arrogance. There was one or two bullshit artists inside there, all right. One or two, not many. There wasn't much time for that sort of behavior because we were too challenged as such. We went in there, we would be working 10, 12, 14 hour days. We didn't mind it. We'd do it 3 or 4 times a week. And but we knew we had a sense of purpose. We had a very clear mission. We had a very clear set of goals and objectives, and it was in advanced technologies and telecoms and all that sort of stuff. But from the people perspective, this was most of them fell into this category. We even analyzed our core competencies. Every organization has competencies. And usually we try to aggregate these down to maybe 8 or 12 core competencies. Because in this case, when we carried out this, we had, I think it was 250 odd competencies. When we asked everyone to fill in a survey online and say, well, what do you do? What's your qualification, your experience, what are areas, and so on. Everything went in there. Everything from being able to drive lorries, to speak multiple languages, to program in C, and to understand telecommunications, computer scientists, hardware engineers, all of this sort of stuff. But you had people in there and guys that were doing courses down in UL and video technology and so on. So when we came to, I was setting up this new, you know your MMSs when you want to send picture text. So, well, we introduced that. We were one of the first to introduce that platform, and we were building that. And I was setting up the team to develop that technology, and we had carried out this survey. And one of the guys in the job, when I looked down through the competency profiles, he was studying video technology down in UL. And I said, great stuff. Video or photographs, being able to transmit images on MMS was one of the features or functions of MMS above and beyond normal text. So I said, how could I get this guy now to work on this project? How could I poach him from the other area and incentivize him? So I approached him. I said, look, I see you're doing video encoding and so on, so forth down UL. Yeah. Look, we have a new project coming up, new product, and would you like to work on it? Oh, I don't know, I like doing what I'm doing. I said, I'll tell you what, I said, I'll pay for your course, and you come work for us. And he said, seriously? And I said, yeah. I said, it's a win-win. I said, this isn't a charity. I said, you're advanced in this area. You know about the video encoding, so you'll hit the ground running for us. What remains in your course, we'll cover the cost. Of course, it's all tax deductible anyway, so it wasn't a huge favour. I wasn't a big guy, as you can see. And it was, so it worked out. So we started looking at that as one of the incentives. Above and beyond money, could we use other mechanisms, such as paying for education and so on and so forth, to incentivize staff? And it actually worked, and worked tremendously well. But we ended up building the team with all these guys and ladies inside. We analysed it down to 8 competencies. 7 months later, when we had the first prototype of the MMS system, we had a potential customer in Austria, and we went down there, or I didn't, the lads went down with our software and hardware, and in the next room, more or less, corridor, was our competing company. Now, we knew that they were a much bigger company, and we pretty much resigned to the fact that we weren't going to get the contract. But nevertheless, we were there. We're at the front cusp of a wave, so to speak, in terms of the technology and the understanding of all of this. If we didn't win that one, we'll win the next one. But the testers that I sent out, when I looked at their competency profiles, 3 of them spoke fluent German. And I said, any chance you'd like to go down to Austria for a couple of weeks to test? And they said, why? I said, and don't speak a word of German. listen to the competitors there. They all speak German, and feed it back to us. And they did. So the competitor company were upgrading their systems almost every second day. So the guys were listening to all this, feeding back to us. So as much as we could, we tried to upgrade once a week and so on and so forth. So, as I said, I keep using that expression, happy days. No, it's so it was a win-win. So we were using skill sets, but the guys really appreciated the fact that we're doing stuff above and beyond their normal 9 to 5 or 8 to 11 type roles and so on and so forth. So this is why we call them self-directed. So you would see it inside in your manuals yourselves, self-directed learning. In other words, you have to do a lot of the work, as opposed to us teaching and all that sort of stuff. So that's the kind of stuff we're talking about, that they already know what's expected of them. And now, here was an interesting twist. February 12th, 1983. It was what? Jesus, thanks very much. Oh, Jesus. Well, let's put it this way. My daughter is older than you. And she's the youngest. God almighty. Oh, Jesus, talk about being stopped in your tracks. No, I'm joking. Anyway, on February 2nd, 12th, 1983, I was starting up in Ericsson. I'd already worked before that. It wasn't my first job. And I was driving into Ericsson, and there was a strike on. And I don't know, Jesus, should I pass the strike or whatever? And there was two guys on the picket line from Clonmel, and one of them was related to me. And he said, you can gather I'm from Clonmel, obviously. Anyway, he said, no, go ahead, Mark. This is just we're the installation engineers for Ericsson and field staff as such, and this is just a dispute and blah blah blah. Go ahead. And so paid no attention. And so what happened was Ericsson were building the new electronic telephone exchanges. They were known as AXE10, the 10 being the 10 digital stuff. What used to exist were electromechanical exchanges. Okay, and Athlone built a telephone exchange down there, building to house this new technology, and Ericsson installed it. And they built this fabulous white building, the big tower that's down, the mast that's down there. And Ericsson installed the very first digital exchange in there, and it was this piece of equipment that sat in the corner. The lads used to play soccer and table tennis inside in the place because they overbuilt the building, made it too big. But anyway, make long story short, these guys were electromechanical engineers. They installed all those older systems, and the company had, now we were going digital, and Ericsson outside were manufacturing a lot of the equipment, but we were also setting up a software division. And most of those guys coming in from the software division were coming from Cork with electronics degrees, or coming from Kevin Street with electrical degrees and electronics degrees and so on. So these guys were pretty much cutting edge stuff. They were the first of these computer scientists that we started to spew out here in Ireland. We were ahead of the curve, almost globally. That's why we got so many companies coming in, the likes of Apple and Motorola in the early days. Of course, Ericsson and Philips and a whole raft of these companies came in because the talent pool in Ireland was quite high, and they were young and highly educated. So the company decided that because we're going digital, we needed that type of staff. So the young guys coming in here are now instantly up here. These were the high competence, high technology guys, and the older guys were back down here. So guys who had been with the company 10, 20 years, because of their old capabilities, old technology, it was essentially becoming redundant. So the company, well, let's just say before that happened there, all the guys were up here, highly competent. So the company wants to get rid of them. And that's why there was a strike. So they came to an agreement and blah, blah, blah. So they retrained most of the old guys. So those older guys came down here. The new young kids, so to speak, came up here, and they were the graduate engineers coming in here. They were helping to train the older guys for 6 months or so. And eventually, these guys, they accelerated. So they had to go through the motivation, and keep them interested and so on. So we're keeping going. And then as they got the capability, keeping more. And they ended up coming back up here and surpassing a lot of the graduates. But it took nearly a year and a half. And it was one of the, I had nothing to do with it. It was just, I was in finance at the time. I was totally different parts of the company. But it was fascinating to see how, because I knew some of these guys, and one particular character is from Clonmel called Fizzy Lynch. Jesus Christ, a character altogether, you know. And one of the other guys that worked there was, his mate was known as Bucklehead. I said, Fizzy, why in the name of God do you call him Bucklehead? I said, jeez, he only comes up to me, buckle on me belt, and I put my pint on it. They were the type of characters you had, but they were exceptionally talented guys when it came to most of them, 90% of them retrained, came inside working with these young lads, and you could feel the discomfort they had because they would have been high earners, seriously high earners when they were out in the field, and they were the elite of the company. And suddenly to find themselves being trained by guys in some cases half their age. So it was they had a pride pill to swallow and all that sort of stuff. Now, on top of that, there were some very clever managers, and one guy in particular, as it happens, also comes from Clonmel. And his name was Jerry Cahill. And Jerry Cahill, he's long since passed away, he was visionary. He saw all of this capability, and he had this fantastic personality to be able to bring the boys in and say, look, don't worry about that sort of stuff. And he said, just pick up the pieces, come in here, retrain. 90% of them, as I said, went from there down to there and back up here. The other 10% took huge packages and went and bought plantations down in Thailand and places like that and lived happy ever after kind of scenario. But it was really fascinating, and that's why, and that's going back there. And I didn't even know about this model; didn't exist back then. And eventually it came out, and I said that precisely describes the situation, and that happens so many times in companies. Okay, not so much the new technology replacement, but teams become fickle, and there can be also other reasons why people are underperforming, and why 1 minute they're up here and then they're drifting back here. And that's your job as a leader and manager inside your organization to start identifying these. That's one of the reasons why I think PIPs are a disgrace, because as an effective leader or manager in your organization, you should know the capabilities and abilities and motivations of your staff, such that you know how to coach them, mentor them, cajole them, coerce them slightly in a professional manner to be able to get the best out of them. And this is just another way of saying the same things. You have to direct them, coach them, support them, and then delegating up here. So these are just all the buzzwords around, and a nice way of trying to remember the different states of a team, or how they need to perform as such. High directive and low supportive behavior. So direct them, tell them to go and do what they have to do, and without repeating myself again. Why did I put this one up here? It also kind of conveys another message about teams and so on, and the differences of the capabilities and personalities and so on. So if you look here, you have Danny Carroll from Clonmel. Oh, jeez, I'll stop going on about Clonmel. It's getting boring. The only good thing to come from Clonmel, apart from me, no, it's Bulmers. Anyway, you have your conductor here. That's your team. That's your leader. That's your team manager. Does he know how to play every one of those instruments? Absolutely not. Probably knows how to play some of them, maybe just one of them. But it doesn't matter. He understands, he knows, because he has the master plan in front of him here. He has the score, as they call it. All of me. Then you have the violins, first violins, and you start to go out second violins, violas, right back to the percussion section over here. And then you'll have the woodwind up along here. More, and the brass up around here and so on. So we have all these different elements of the orchestra. Now, if you ever heard an orchestra tuning up, you'd hardly sit there for 2 hours listening to a concert of an orchestra tuning up. It's just horrendous stuff. It's like dragging a cat backwards through the dog flap or something like that. It's wretched stuff. But when they're all tuned up and ready to go, you'll sit there. It'll be a nice piece of music, whatever you're into, right? And so on and so forth. But it's pleasant, it's harmonic. They all know, and interesting, if you've ever played an orchestra, you could be up here, you could be back here, you will be listening to yourself, and you'll be listening to others, and you'll also be watching him. Every so often, you don't actually have to keep your eyes all the time on the conductor. Most of the time, they don't. Every occasion, or maybe when these guys have to do a little bit of a solo, or it's that brass section that has to play a little bit more, you might then see some of them, their eyes go towards the conductor so as they get the right nod when to come in, and then they go off and do their own thing as such, and paying attention. So he, as a figurehead, he's there more of a supportive role and just say, come in, come out, quiet, bring it up, speed up, slow down, all this sort of stuff. But they all listen to one another and listen to the rest of the thing, because no one wants to be out of tune. No one wants to blast out the music and listen to me. I'm the first violin, or I'm the first trumpet up here. I'm going to make my noise to hell with everyone else, because it has to be harmonious and so on, and kept at the right tempo. So that's why you have the conductor, generally speaking. That's why we use this concept and we call it orchestrated team performance, hence the orchestra. So when everything is working well and it's pleasant, and it's the same for an organization. When all the parts of an organization, HR, beating the same old drum, finance, sales and marketing, operations, whatever sections you're looking at, they're all representative of the different functions inside an organization. And when they're all gelling together, it can be extremely effective. Now, here's the little twist. We also have models for organizational maturity, years of experience or otherwise, but how effective as an organization. So as the orchestra begins to play and play more, they become more familiar with each other. Sometimes they don't even have to use the music, become so familiar with the stuff. That's when you're starting to move into more advanced levels. That's where you have learning taking part inside in the organization. That's where the maturity begins to kick in. You know that people will always turn up for practice, that they're always there at concerts, and they know that sometimes they can't be in situ, but they'll practice at home. They'll put in that extra effort. But ultimately, they have a sense that we are good. And I like to follow, for example, one of my pastimes, our brass bands, particularly English brass bands, and the national competitions they have inside there. And it's absolutely phenomenal to see. And these are all amateurs. And just to watch the way they come together, the dedication, and how they work independently and come together and produce absolutely phenomenal music, whatever you're into. But that's one of the reasons why, as I said, it's such a powerful exemplar of how an organization can and should perform, literally perform. So if you've got all the right ingredients mixing and playing together at the right time, at the right pace, and if it's a change program, if it's a new product, and so on, you can do these extremely effectively. And that's where all the other issues like quality, blah, 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 if you do it right, you have less waste, and hence you make the bottom line grows. Now, just how am I doing time-wise? Oh, jeez, I'm again running out. I'm going to fly through these things. So leadership is united in a commitment to accomplish a common set of goals. Okay, focus, having a sense of mission, set goals in an organization. Values and capitalize on the unique skills, knowledge, and experience of individuals different from each other in the team, and has positive view of change and process to manage it. So these next couple of slides literally are just underpinning all of what I've said already this morning about leadership, about the teams, about your individuals and teams, and how you gel together and the orchestration of teams. So having a clarity, clearly communicated set of goals. If you're running projects, clearly identified objectives. And many years ago, again, we did analysis on projects in organizations. And when we looked at where were they failing and so on. Most projects fail in some shape or form. You know, if you ever built a house, you might have set a budget and guarantee you didn't come in under budget anyway. If you did, you didn't build a house that you originally intended to build and so on. But they generally run, sometimes 2.5 times over budget. That's not a wild exaggeration. Anyway, we did this in very advanced technical projects, and we found that most of the fault or errors in projects were traced back to the planning phase. That we didn't put sufficient time into planning the projects, identifying clearly what the features were, what the potential solutions were, and then putting the project activities into place after that. By cutting back on this perceived easy part of the project and time-wasting part, that's where, so in other words, if you plan to fail, or if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And absolutely, as I said, we have the databases to prove all of that. And there have been books and all sorts of articles say that 80% of projects fail in the planning phase. So sit down, plan your work, and then work the plan. All the old adages, but they're actually true. So having clear communications and so on and so forth. Then relationships, has clearly defined norms and ground rules and so on, which guide the team's behaviour. So you do have a set of team expectations and norms, and as a leader inside, you need to be very much having the finger on the pulse there. Teams start to impose self-rules, self-norms onto it, and have expectations. And you'll see that, for example, at 12 o'clock today or something like that, when Ireland go out there, all the players know exactly what they have to do. They all have a sense of purpose, we hope. And but they trust one another. And if someone isn't carrying their weight, the other players will say, come on. They don't wait for Joe Schmidt to start calling him in at half time or whatever. You'll have Johnny Sexton shouting someone at the back there, say, move faster, watch what's happening over there. So they're observing. So the team themselves, okay, he might be the team captain, but it could be anyone at the front row, and the guys are up front themselves. They'll be talking amongst themselves. This is what we need to do. Counteract this. We see a weakness over here. These guys are exploiting it. We'll take care of this. So they expect all of the front row to literally carry the weight and play their part in it. So you begin to see this happen. It's really dynamic. It's happening in the space of 70 odd minutes as such. In the lifetime of a company or during a year, the same things happen within a team itself. Sometimes someone is going through a bit of a rough personal patch as such. The team can actually cover for that person. And oftentimes they do. When you have a good gelling team together, they'll take, right, Mark, you can't make it in for the next couple of weeks. You have an issue down Clonmel. No, you have to be at home. You can't be here and all this sort of stuff. So the lads will carry the can for me. But I would have to reciprocate. Maybe in 6 months' time, maybe in 6 weeks' time. It would be an expectation that, now, Mark, we bailed you out there a couple of weeks ago. You need to help us here. Joe can't be around. Can you take his subjects and so on and so forth? So that's how we operate. And that's how effective teams operate. So, I mean, if I were to try and say, no, I'm not coming in. I'm only working 9 to 5. One sure way of alienating yourself from the rest of the team. And again, it wouldn't even be a 4x2. It would be several of them coming at you. But these are the kind of norms that we put on. There's expectations, behaviours, and so on that the team imposes on itself, and that's all part of that team building process. Forming, norming, storming, and performing stuff. So recognize and reward the team, individuals, and their accomplishments. And again, this is why when we talk about the knowing your personality types, some people like to have their names put up in lights and all that sort of stuff as a form of recognition. Other people's just a simple thank you can work and so on. So you need to know what works and what doesn't work with each of your individual team members. So building relationship. So the methods, when we're talking about developing a really, really effective team, use a consistent yet flexible team operating procedures. Again, processes and procedures are only as good as the people that use them. But never blame the people. Processes will always be at fault. No matter how thick someone might be putting things in an envelope, no matter how challenged someone might be and so on and so forth, it's the process will be at fault. Maybe it was the way you explained how to fold the out. I don't know in this case. But in any case, processes always fail. People don't. Okay? So it may be a case of going back to the drawing board, rewriting the processes. Word of a very strong advice, when you're writing your processes, involve the people that are actually going to use them. Because they have, as we say, tacit knowledge. They have little shortcuts, little ideas, little improvements and so on, that if you don't tap into that, then you're alienating their value. Carol O'Dell wrote a great book on this thing called If We Only Knew What They Already Know. In other words, our staff know an awful lot. And if we can tap into that reservoir of knowledge, then the organization can be extremely powerful. But we don't. And people don't often volunteer their knowledge because they feel that this is their reason why they're being employed. In other words, they say, this is my value. If I show all my cards at once, then I could be let go, or I'm useless, and so on and so forth. Not the case. In a very high-performance team or highly functional team, those kind of fears are never a problem because we create new challenges for those people. And people like to learn new things. So the stuff you know today could be used, or it may not, or it may be redundant in 6 weeks, 6 years, or whatever. So we're in this constant learning mode, hence lifelong learning. So you need to have that kind of environment inside the team itself. And then these 8 valuable lessons. When the conditions are right in place, teams can significantly improve their performance within weeks and not years. That's a clear. Now, I'm just going to flick down through them here. Teams must develop strength in 3 key areas: alignment with business, working relationship, and operational effectiveness. So your sense of purpose. What's the reason you're here? You're in this department. Why is this department working on this particular project? Because this project is required by the company to achieve this business strategy. The business strategy supports the overall corporate or company strategy. So you know there's a linkage between what the company wants to do and why you're coming into work in the morning, other than just to get paid and get out of the house to avoid the kids or whatever. But you have a sense of purpose within the organization itself. And of course, then working relationships. There will be tensions, there will be conflicts between people, between you and people, and so on. So how to actually mitigate those, how to remove those tensions, and keep people focused. You know, the old sayings, you know, devil makes work for idle hands, and so on. So keep people occupied. They have less time to go around and bitch and moan and whinge and give out and all this sort of stuff. In other words, you begin to negate the toxicity that could evolve or emerge inside an organization, in groups. And measurement and feedback on team effectiveness, extremely important. We're not good. I mean, even as a culture in Ireland, we're not good at giving feedback, generally speaking. And we need to be able to give people praise. We give it to our kids most of the time. Yeah. But we encourage them. Now, I don't mean giving them medals when they come last in the freaking race. I mean, that's gone over the top stupidity altogether. But, you know, well measured feedback and as such. Going in every morning, giving high fives, as I mentioned the other night, or telling everyone they're doing great bit of stuff. It might work for a couple of mornings, but after that, people say, "Jeez, your man's on some bullshit brigade thing now," you know. But the whole point about it becomes insincere. So it needs to be measured and timely. That's the important thing about it when you're giving feedback. And of course, and then executive support and sponsorship are essential. So getting support from senior management and blah, 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 to make it in other words, for you to be able to pave the way for you to support your team to achieve the objectives and so on. So getting senior management buy-in, and oftentimes getting them down to talk and meet up with the team and so on, and recognize the team's efforts as such. Okay, it sounds lovely. Does it work? It does. Does it work all the time? Yeah, debatable. But generally speaking, you need to have that kind of. Sometimes we literally have to slow down to catch up. And in a lot of organizations, unfortunately, we're running too fast. We don't give ourselves breathing time to slow down and evolve a natural kind of. Now, so sometimes, well, in organizations, we were putting in these new systems, you know, new quality type systems, CMM, capability, maturity modeling, and all that sort of stuff, and we put them in place, and Six Sigma even. And the company would say, you know, this is going to take 6 months, and we're going to have to slow down here and do this, that, and the other thing. And the immediately say, oh, geez, what about our productivity? Guarantee you, in 12 months, our productivity will be up maybe 20%, 50%. So you need to literally slow down now. And we've actually statistically proven from all the data, again, this is all this data analytics stuff, we've actually shown that by taking stock, slowing down, and clearly identifying what programs we want to introduce, that we can improve productivity. In actual fact, we can prove this before we even do it. That's why we use data analytics. That's why we have the likes of Six Sigma. Any of you here working on Six Sigma or in your organizations? There's a couple, private sector, yeah? Thought so. Six Sigma unheard of in the public sector, yeah. But can it work in the public sector? Absolutely. I'm sure, geez, I'm a Dianist. Anyway, it can work in the public sector as well. But it's when you're at that high level of using the data and the analysis, capability, maturity, modeling, when you're at level 5, you're using pure statistics, literally to analyze performances. And you can make suggested changes to performance. You can test them without even introducing the change physically in the operating environment as such. So that's the kind of stuff you're looking at when you're talking about being able to guarantee improvements inside the organization.
So, folks, as you no doubt realized not too long into that video, that was indeed a recording from last year, from the face-to-face meeting with our presentation with your predecessors. Nevertheless, the material is as relevant today as it was then, as indeed it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, in a manner of speaking. But some of the core concepts have been introduced, some of the more effective models And indeed, there were some questions there that would have asked you directly and partaken and possibly use polls. Okay, I'm not going to hold you any longer. You have all that material, and we can discuss all of this, if you wish, on Monday and Thursday nights of next week. So, as I said, hopefully now we're not going into any level fives. We'll hear from the government, no doubt, before the weekend is over. And in any case, we'll be able to continue as is for the foreseeable future anyway. And of course, that will work for us. Okay, folks, for the remainder of the weekend, I'm not sure if you have anything on after me, but and have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you then. Okay, folks, take it easy.